Hey guys, we are about to have casting assistant, casting director, actor, teacher, mom, wonderful human being, Sandra Scragg. That's right. It's time for us to get people into the trenches, into this vlog, into the Zoom. So you guys are seeing these interviews, let alone hearing them. And here we are. Here she is. Like we said, like we promised, the one, the only, Sandra Scragg. And the applause and the clap, 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 clap. Woo! Welcome, welcome to Into the Trenches.
Thank you so much, you guys. I'm so honored to be here, really. And I was so excited, and getting ready for preparing all this because this is a subject so near and dear to my heart, obviously. And I'm so excited to share some tidbits with everybody out there.
For those of you who are watching, whether you're an actor or filmmaker or producer or just a fan of the business, Sandra wears multiple hats, like I said. So what's cool is a lot of this insight is going to be coming not only from her producer hat, her actor hat, primarily her casting director hat, but this is also for all of you guys who are in smaller markets, I think really good to tune in and listen, take notes, but also those of you in bigger markets. Making your own stuff is awesome, but it's also great when you have a good team to support you. So I'm going to start it right off with Sandra. How did you even get into casting? How did you become a casting director, a casting assistant? How did that start?
Well, Angela, I have been in theater all my life, and I teach drama as well. And about 15 years ago, I was asked to coach the school's competition team to enter in these drama competitions where 12, 16 schools would participate. And I quickly realized the value of knowing my cast, knowing my students, and slipping them into those roles that best suited them based on their characters, their look, who they were. And I also realized that I see it instinctively. It is a lot of instinct in this, just pinpointing that one person for that one role. And it's magic. And good casting, I quickly realized if you nail your casting, your project is 50% there in terms of talent. I mean, you can cast other people in roles and stuff, but it makes the director's job, I think, a little harder. But if you get that casting right, it really works. And so then I got into film, and some of my friends asked me to help them cast. And I, of course, said, yes, thank you, love to. And I quickly realized it's the same thing. Knowing your actor, knowing the talent, knowing the role inside out, knowing what's required, and actually seeing that, because now I don't have the advantage of knowing who is in front of me, right? And it's the same thing. It's instinct. You immediately know. And again, just being part of that pre-production creative process, it was wonderful. I was then lucky enough to land in Nike Imaru's classes, and wonderful Nike. She taught me so much, and I thought, you know what, I need to maybe dip into the casting thing with her a little bit. So I started volunteering as greeter and reader, and I now work with her on many, many projects, even before being in the audition room, as her casting associate on several projects. And I'm learning so much. I love her to bits.
Great. I have a, I know I've sent you these questions ahead of time, but there's one you're going to have no trouble with this, I promise, but it's a better question. And it's related to my question, which is what do you love about your job, which I definitely want to hear about. But can you just tell us a little bit about what a casting director does? And I'm asking because I've done a few auditions recently for independent producers who are working without casting directors, and the experience was not so good. For instance, I was a friend of mine. These were, of course, Zoom-based callback auditions, and they had one of my buddies in the waiting room for an hour, just waiting. And back in the day when I used to go to in-person auditions, I'd have my own kind of rule. Like, if an hour is there and I haven't been seen yet, I'm very close to leaving.
Yeah.
Because I believe that in this profession, when you're working with a casting director, there is a standard. Things are in theory more professional, more organized. And I don't think actors should have to wait an hour to be seen. So maybe just tell us about what a casting director does.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, from the beginning of the process, the casting director gets the breakdowns from whichever studio is producing, whether it's an indie, whether it's a commercial, whether it's a film, or TV show, and then we look at those breakdowns that we get. We sort them out. We send them out to agents. The agents come back with submissions. And we pick our favorite, let's say, I don't know, whatever, 50 or 40. And those are the ones we ask to come into first round auditions, whether it's self-tapes or Zoom auditions. And then we narrow that back down to maybe top 10, 15 maybe for callbacks. Very often the producer or the director will be in the room for those. And then comes the picking and the booking and all the exciting stuff that goes with that. So there's a huge amount of paperwork involved. There's a huge amount of communication with agents, back and forth, talents availability. We look at that. Yeah, and it's a big project. I can tell you, David, casting, for example, in LA, one role can easily bring in 2,500 submissions. And we're like, so, literally, I've got like 6 hours to get through them all and to narrow that down to 50 and then back down to even more. So time is of the essence. We have to work very, very quickly, very fast. But man, it's a great process. And as you said, when it's auditions, we'll always have someone, a professional reader with us. We will always be on time. This is the other thing, time is of the essence. Most those big auditions, those first round auditions, 5-10 minutes per person, maybe, and that's all we've got. So it goes really, really fast. Obviously callbacks, we have a little more time, but there will always be somebody to let you in from the waiting room, who'll communicate with you while you're in the wait room, keep you updated. And that type of thing. So it's super professional.
I
We don't
love
want to keep talent waiting either, because we know how much work is involved in doing a self-tape, preparing for the audition. It's huge, and the nerves are going, and you don't want to be sitting there in the wait room, because then you start falling out of character, you get pissed off. Can I say that?
depending on the role, it could work. But I love that you broke it down that way, Sandra. We always tell our students, you guys celebrate the audition. And you just, case in point, thousands are submitted. If you got one of those 40 spots or one of those 100 spots, that in itself is a mini booking. That's something to celebrate. If you get a call back, just like you said, from hundreds to just 40, or from 40 to just 5 or 10, again, celebrate. And yet so many actors are like, but I didn't book it. That's okay. You made a fan of the room. You got to act that day and show your work. I also want to speak on the word, or letters, I should say, CSA. A lot of people don't know what that means. They're like, what does that mean if a casting director is this CSA or not? And I would love for you to let us know what that is. If you plan to be, if that's something Sandra's thinking. But I also would love a little bit add on to that, that once they do get to the casting process, have you ever felt that an actor that you really hoped could get the part didn't get it? And how was that as a casting director? I think a lot of actors think it's you guys, you're the ones who decide. And so we get mad at casting directors if we don't get the part. And we always tell our students, but it'd be great for them to hear it right from the source, that actually you guys don't always get to pick, right? So first, CSA, what does that mean? And yeah, a little bit about when things didn't go your way.
Okay, well, CSA, guys, is Casting Society of America, and it's the certification for becoming a casting director in your own right. Unfortunately, with COVID and everything, the requirements to become a CSA are 100 weeks in the last 5 years of casting credited movies, TVs, projects, and not as an associate or assistant, as the CD. So I'm thinking with COVID, I'm probably going to have to register again because I'm not a CSA yet. This is all pretty recent for me. I'm actually getting to this point, of being able to have my own casting, access to casting networks, casting profiles, so I can actually cast on my own. Yeah, so I think I'm going to have to re-register and restart the clock of the 5 years because I think COVID put a little spanner in the works there, to be honest. But yeah, when things didn't go my way, it happens a lot. We see obviously whom we would pick for the role, but it's never up to us. And I think I equate it a little bit with the writer of a screenplay who sees his baby being transformed into this teenager, with the director and the producers, having different visions of this wonderful screenplay you wrote, but you don't have any more creative access to it. But yes, we definitely always have our favorites. But I'm learning not to get too invested in that choice because it's not up to me. Indie films, I can talk the producer into things sometimes. But the bigger films and TV shows and things like that, I as it works is those tapes of the callbacks. I can put in the top 5, for example, but they can see them all. And the producers may decide, okay, this is the person for this role, definitely. The director comes and says, no, I want that one. And so they all agree, okay, it's that one. And then the showrunner comes in and says, no, you guys crazy, I want that one. And that's it. We have no control over that part of the process. We can make our notes, we can make our little suggestions, but it's ultimately up to production in so many ways. And it's sometimes it's like, but we always know there's always another film, there's always another project, and as COVID goes away, it's going to get super busy. I can see things ramping up for the summer already.
Thank you for that. I think that's actors. See, now David, you can hear us and believe us. Like you even said, depending on the project, producers, directors, there's so many other people in the mix who make those decisions. So let's be grateful these casting directors keep calling us in. You guys obviously want to place us somewhere. And sometimes it, whether it's your number one, you just keep coming back and doing the work.
And that's so awesome to hear that, Sandra. It's just so amazing, but also it's just great information because people just have opinions. People have different opinions about what's right for the role, what's the best car, what's the best pizza joint in Seattle, whatever. Everybody has opinions. So even in this scenario, if you're an actor, if you are getting called into the room, keep on keeping on and then just let it go. Because as we just learned from Sandra, the casting director might have a different opinion than the assistant or the associate, who might have a different opinion than the producer and the showrunner and the director. Everybody's looking at it and they're like, no, this is the one for the role. And somebody else who's looking at the exact same tape has a different opinion based on their own whatever, their own feelings, their own perspective. And it's just, I'm surprised that I ever get cast as anything ever because of all these opinions. And at least people have to come together like, yeah, that'll do. He'll be fine. So it's just, I love learning more about what it's like on the other side of the table. So this is really, really exciting. Now I have a question for you, and I know you want to talk about this one. This is related to the casting site, the casting website called Casting Networks. And it could be, I want you to also imagine that some people watching this may not know what Casting Networks is. So if you could briefly just lead us in with that information, and then just tell us about actors' casting networks profiles and just what they can do to make those profiles better.
That is a super question, and thank you for asking it, because Casting Networks is your introduction to the casting folks. It's a profile that is, it's a website. It's on the web. It's on the internet. It's there's several that are very region specific. So, for example, Casting Networks is for Seattle based or Washington State, and then there's Casting Frontier, which is the Portland area, and then it moves on. You know, there's others for other areas, and the other one I'll mention is Actors Access for LA. So these are super, super important websites, sites to be on. Your profile, your headshots, your resume, your skills listed, everything, it's on there. Everything who you are as talent is on there. And it's so, so important to keep it up to date. And here's why. Most companies, production companies that are looking for talent will post their casting calls on Casting Networks. The agents receive those breakdowns and those casting calls, and they will look through their rosters to see who they would submit for each role. Now, if your headshot's not up to date, that makes your agent's life a little difficult. And if you don't have great character shots that they can pick as the main headshot, that makes it hard for them or for you to land the role or to be noticed by the casting people to begin with. So,
Sandra, what do you mean? Would you just speak on that a little bit? Like what you mean by character shots? I think some actors who are aware of these casting sites wonder, how many headshots should I have? What kind of headshots? Could you speak to that a little?
yeah, that's definitely on the top of the list there. Thanks, Angela. Yeah, so headshots, gosh, how important are headshots? They are the most important thing that you as an actor can offer. Keep them up to date, you know, at least once a year. And I can highly recommend Mr. Hogan down here with Seattle Actor Photo. You know, I have to give you a little kudo here because I recently had David take my headshots, and you know, I was feeling a little vulnerable. I was feeling I'm feeling my age, you know, not, yeah. And I think when you're taking, I just want to segue a little bit here, if I may. When you're doing your headshots as yourself, it's very vulnerable because it's you. When you're doing your character shots, which I will explain in a moment, you're in character. So that's a lot easier for a lot of us. But those headshots, those main headshots, that's all you. And so that makes you feel a little vulnerable. And David does an amazing job in putting one at ease and just having a real fun experience. And yeah, we were kind of goofy, which was great. So thank you. But getting back to headshots, yeah. Headshots are super important. Your main headshot is called your commercial shot. And that needs to be a picture just of you in this kind of a frame where I'm sitting right now, and natural, smiling, or if your character is more, you know, a little more morose, that's fine too. Whatever it is, your essence needs to be in that commercial shot. And it's usually brighter lit, it's usually brighter colors. But just so that the CD can see you for you. And then very often we also will have a theatrical headshot, which naturally is a little darker clothes, maybe a little more makeup. Yeah, as Angela goes. Yeah. And then the fun ones, then it's the character shots. You know, the first layer of character shots would be those who, the roles that you can play that are your type. For example, my type, mom, teacher, pastor, those kinds of things. So I would get a few shots, one or two, you know, in that area. And then there's another layer that's even more fun. This is the layer that you'd like to play, that you think you could be good at, that's in your range, like bad cop, or, you know, or just total badass, ninja, whatever. But these are super important too. Yeah. And I'll tell you why. Because once I've gone through the main headshots and I'm starting to look a little deeper. So my first thing is I go through all the headshots and I'm going down to maybe 100 submits. And then I start looking in depth. Okay, headshots. Maybe this role calls for a badass. And if you have one of your shots like that, that I can envision you in that role, you're through to the next round. And that's how that works. And that's why it's so important to give the casting director your whole range of what you look like, excuse me, in these roles. And so yeah, headshots, super important. Um, and then we'll go on quickly to resume. If you have a good, any resume, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be super experienced not to get picked, but don't just add a PDF to your profile, please, folks. Don't make me go click on something. Do the work, fill out the data. It's super easy. Casting Networks and Casting Frontier, they make it super easy just to fill it out. And the beauty of that is also, if you don't have a reel, and we'll talk about reels in a minute. If you don't have a reel, Casting Networks has that provision that you can add a clip of whatever work you've done to that line item in your resume. And I gotta tell you, that is gold. It's so helpful for me to be able to see, let's say I'm doing a comedic role and I see you've been in a funny movie here or a funny commercial, and I click on it because that gives me an idea of your comedic timing. How comfortable are you with comedy? So it's super helpful for me to see that. And I just want to quickly mention here, a lot of you don't know this, but some of you have multiple profiles on Casting Networks. And that might come as a bit of a surprise, but some of you do. In fact, most of you, a lot of you do. And that is because maybe your first agent may have opened a profile for you without you knowing. And maybe you switched agents and they went ahead and put you in there. If I'm looking just through all, if I'm just going in there and just looking at profiles and I see you've got 3, I'm not going to spend the time to figure out which is the good one, the latest one, if you know what I mean. So guys, make sure you only have one up there, and make sure your resumes are up to date and it all looks good. Going down, there's the skills that you fill out. I don't usually look at that unless the breakdown calls for maybe a rapper or a writer or whatever, and then I'll go in and look. So it's good to have that filled out. Folks, if you can't do these things, don't fib. Please don't. If you say you can ride a horse, please ride a horse. Please. And last but not least, there is a little box at the bottom, and it says other notes or miscellaneous. So this little box is super important, funnily enough. What I like to see there, sure, list your awards or whatever, but that's not what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is something more about you, who you are as a person, because we all know we bring part of ourselves to our roles. And we reach into ourselves, into our own experience to come to that place. And so for me to be able to see in advance something interesting about you, something more about you. For example, mine would be, I come from diplomat parents. My father represented a country that was vilified in the 80s, 70s, and 80s. And so we were constantly under a death threat, whether it was, kidnapping threats, death threats, bomb threats. So I know what it's like to be in fear of my life and that of my family. And that brings that depth to it. And that lets the casting director see, oh, that's interesting. And then maybe a fun fact, I can bark like a dog authentically. And I put that in there. So folks, your profiles are super important because that's where we go. That's our introduction to you.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you.
so awesome. Angela, do you have any follow-up questions for that one? Because I do.
Oh, no, I don't. Go ahead.
Two questions. One about reels or clips, and one about headshots. and I'll also mention that, well, let's start with that, because I have another thought that I think is very important regarding these clips that you can drop onto individual lines, or regarding clips in general. What do you think about actors either A, putting a monologue on video and putting that on casting networks, or B, creating their own clip based on, I know that in larger markets especially, you can pay money to have people shoot a scene for you, 1 minute to 3 minutes or whatever. Are these kind of things good for actors? Would you advise that?
I think it's more, I mean, that's all great. The monologues, I don't know. That's a tough one. I would say maybe a created reel that way might work. But really, what we're looking for is range and things that you've actually been in, that we can see really how you are on a set in front of a camera. It's a very different feel when you're doing it for yourself, or you're doing it, or you're it may be your own work, or whatever. It's very, very different, and that doesn't really paint an accurate picture for a casting director.
Awesome. That's fantastic, and I think that's what I hoped you were going to say. The reason why monologues on video and create your own content, whatever, is so, it's important that actors understand, and actors are under a lot of pressure because even student filmmakers, indie filmmakers, people that have done nothing ever, and frankly don't know what they're doing, will create a casting call that it says something like, send us your headshots, resume, and your acting reel. So actors are like, what? I don't know, huh? And I think, in my opinion, for actors who are just getting started out, there's a lot of actors who are going to do some acting and be hobbyists and have an amazing time and are never going to be on network TV ever, but are going to have a lot of time pursuing their dream of performing. And those kinds of actors, in my opinion, or those folks, they might really benefit from putting together an amazing monologue on tape, which has low cost, something that sometimes you can create at home in your self-tape studio yourself. And that kind of video footage might stand in for a reel for a student filmmaker. But I don't think it's quite sufficient for someone who is casting for network television. The other question I have is about headshots. And this comes from, in my opinion, a lot of actors, especially newer actors, or if you come from theater, you think, I'm an actor, I want to do everything, and I can do anything. My range is this wide. I'm funny, I'm dramatic, I can play the hero, I can play the villain. I have an MFA and yada, yada, yada. I've done all these things, I want to play it all. So I'm going to drop 10 different headshots on casting networks that showcase all of these different sides of my personality. Now, as a person, as an actor who's been acting for 20 years and who has had the wonderful fortune of playing dogs, people, good people, bad people, professors, psychopaths, I've played a lot of different roles. But I still don't have 10 headshots on my profile, because one of the things that and also remember this, remember, you know how we see, at least I do, when I'm watching TV, film, I'm like, oh, there's that actor again doing that thing that they always do. They're cast in that role that they always get cast as, right? And they work a lot, and they're probably, who knows, they seem like they would be happy. I'd be happy working a lot, playing similar kinds of dudes in lots of different movies. Is there such a thing as too many headshots? That's my basic question.
Um, I think that's a great question. Quite frankly, and I was thinking of John Wayne. Anyway, but yes, there is such a thing as too many headshots. I think a good number to go with is about 5 or 6, and that includes your main headshot. Again, it's a time thing. I don't have time to sift through too many pictures either, and so I think that pick what you feel represents your range the best. And you know, and never don't underestimate the casting director, because I can see more out of your headshot than you probably can. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I see a lot more than just that picture of you as you know, scruffy, long haired person. I see a lot more than that when I look at that headshot. And so it's important to pick those headshots that are really different. That, you know, when you have such a big range, pick really the different ones, because I can fill in the blanks really easily.
I love that. We've answered actually some of our questions. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to my number 7, just so David can look at his list and know where we're going. Because we already touched on a lot of this. I would love to know, speaking not only, as you know, that Dave and I are also both producers. You know, we've been on that side too, casting wise. We're obviously teachers, but first and foremost, we're actors. And I remember when I was first starting out, before I got to be on the casting side, before I was producing, it was always hard as an actor. So this is for all the actors watching. Why didn't we get feedback? Why didn't a casting director give us feedback? And why didn't we sometimes get notified? And this is more so after we've had a callback. Because I'll say this to you guys right now, actors. If you've only had an audition, you're most likely not going to get notified. If you didn't get a call back, they don't need to thank all, like you've said, all thousand of you, all hundreds of you. Some companies and casting directors, I do appreciate when they thank us no matter what. Yay. But my question is, why don't actors get feedback? I know the answer now, but I would love for you to speak to it. And why is it that even after a callback, sometimes actors don't hear until the postings on IMDb, or the film is out, or the TV show's out, or the commercial spot is airing?
Lots of questions there. So first off, why don't we give feedback? So I learned the hard way not to give feedback. Because I think a lot of actors feel like it's the casting director who does make the final decision. And if they've had an awesome audition, and the, you know, and we get caught up in it too. I mean, when someone has a great audition, you're right in there with them. Because that's what we're here for. We're here for you actors. We want you to succeed. We want you to get that role. Especially here in the Northwest, we want you to get the role over the LA actors. But and so when we get into it and we're like, oh, that was great, okay, let's do it, let's just do it, you know, and we get really excited with you, that can be a bit of, that can have a backlash, you know. Some, you know, you dear people, you know, you might be leaving that audition thinking, I nailed it, I booked it, and announce it to the world, and you're like, no, it's not up to me. So I think, you know, as a casting director myself, I've learned to tone that down a lot. It's hard sometimes because you guys are pretty awesome, but I cannot give you feedback for that very reason. It just creates an expectation that may not happen. And 1 out of 1,000, as I say, or 2,000 gets picked. It, as David said, you know, it's crazy that we can even imagine that we actually get a job. But it's really not up to the CD. And I think it's best if the CD just, you know, it's my job to get great auditions from great actors to present to the producers. That's my job. And to build you guys up, you know, help you get the best performance out of you that I can. And that's the other part of it. So, and that's why you don't get feedback. So don't feel bad. I've learned my lesson. The other question, yes. Why do we not get notification? So it's basically just sheer volume, sheer time. You do not want your agents to be sending you emails saying, I'm sorry you didn't book this role, when they could be working hard to get your next audition. This is what you want them to do. You want them to hustle for you, that you are getting more and more and more auditions, not being told, oh, I'm sorry you didn't book that one. Having said that, when I do cast indie films, and callbacks often look a little different than for huge, big productions. I think in indie films, we all enjoy doing, the chemistry tests and stuff like that. It becomes, it's a real fun, it's almost like a workshop, a day of workshop. And then definitely, I will send a message to the agents to forward to each actor to thank them for their time, and to tell them how wonderful I think they all are. Because by the time you make it to callbacks, like David said, you know, I would say that's nailing it totally. Did that answer
Awesome.
everything? I think.
Yes, yes. And you even circle back to a question I skipped over because I love that you've made for us watching, anybody watching, especially producers or filmmakers who want to hire you, it's one of those things that obviously bigger budget projects versus indie projects, it's different how involved the casting director and how much time the casting director has. With those bigger projects, even when you were working with Nikkei, like with Z Nation, that's just going quick, 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 fast, 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 fast. You can't let me individually write for all 1,000 actors that auditioned a wonderful remark. So I appreciate that. And I think it's good for people to hear this.
And Angela, I feel the frustration. I know it's frustrating, but it's that attitude of, once you're out of that audition room, guys, just leave it there.
Yeah.
You did your best. Let's focus on the next one now. And if
Yeah.
you do get a call back, yes, it really is. It's a mental thing. Just move on. And I know it's hard. I get it.
Thank you, Sandra. If I'm an indie producer and I want to work with you, how do I do that? Because I think it's important that, well, I don't know. I think that the fear is, I have my producer hat on. I'm not gonna bring on a casting director. That's too much money. Or they think they can do it themselves. They don't understand what you do. So how would a producer connect with you, and what makes for a good producer CD relationship?
That's another great question. So first off, the idea that a CD, and here I'm going to speak for myself, honestly. I'm not going to speak for the rest of our wonderful casting directors in Seattle. But because I'm not a certified CSA, and because I'm learning, well, not learning as much as I want the experience, and so I don't know, I'm so happy to work with indie production, just because there's a passion there that the big leagues, you just don't get to that level anymore where you can, maybe give some input into the film, maybe give some input, some production value, because especially with the new ones. And there's nothing I like better than to support young and upcoming filmmakers. Folks, I take my hat off to all of you. And I am happy to work with all of you. And if there's an amazing, 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 amazing script, I may even do it for nothing, but we'll always be able to work something out. Yeah, but it's got to be that 1 in a million, because don't forget this, guys, you're all making, yeah. I do work through agents. So if you're not going to pay me, you got to pay the talent. But guys, this is just an aside, filmmakers, please, please, please pay your talent, pay your crew. It might be a passion project, but whose passion is it? Yours or everybody else's? I get making a film with a bunch of friends, but if you really want to do quality work and you're going to be submitting this thing to film festivals and it's the start of your portfolio, use a casting director. We have such a huge pool of talent to choose from. And I know you might think of a friend or an acquaintance who's got talent and who would fit that role perfectly. But I got to tell you, there's a plethora of talent out there who would be even more perfect for that role. And you really, really, really want to book those people. And I can take the paperwork out of it for you. I can work with the agents for you. You know that these folks are going to show up on set. They're going to be on time. It's a whole different level. And if you're ready to take your filmmaking to the next level, that's something you really should consider doing. I would totally encourage it. And again, I'm happy to discuss and chat any kind of budget. and see what we can work out. The relationship with the producer. So what's super important also in the indie film world is great communication. I cannot stress that enough. And open communication, those character breakdowns that you submit, let's chat about them. Let's chat about, get your locations nailed down, get everything in place. Casting should be the last thing that happens, especially in the indie world, because I cannot tell you how many projects I've worked on. Funding didn't come through, location didn't come through. I cannot even begin to tell you all the problems that happened, and casting's been done and folks have been booked. Agents have booked their talent. And it's the most disheartening thing, I think, for an actor who knows that they've been booked on this project and it just doesn't happen. So guys, please make casting your last thing that you're going to do. And we can do it fast. Just a note. But yeah, so communication is key. Help me see your vision so that I can get the best possible people for your project.
I think it's also one of those things where I love that you were saying this. So everybody, Sandra wouldn't say it if she didn't mean it. Anytime we brought on help with casting, I think so many times producers fear like, how much is that going to cost me? And it's like, it's not even about what, let's say it is a bigger paycheck, than they wanted to give, but it is the effort and time and feedback and knowledge that another person handling all those things that I love that you spelled out, like dealing with agents properly, professionally, the paperwork. I mean, some people might go, oh, I know how to do a contract. It's beyond that. Having now moving on to our third feature film, David and I have done 3 full features, over 24 short films, and we've gotten distribution for many of our shorts and for our features. That's where that paperwork and having that casting director who kept everything for you. Trust me, I think a lot of indie filmmakers don't realize your distributor wants every single copy. There's all these things, these image releases, these contracts, that a casting director can be such a benefit. And I think indie filmmakers feel that we can just take it all on. And sometimes help is just really what you need. And I love that you're saying, please communicate your vision. So then there are no misunderstandings down the road. It's like, yeah. So I would love, in the Zoom world, and we skipped over one little thing, so I'm going to just throw this one in too, but with Zoom callbacks or even Zoom auditions, Dave and I would love for you to give our viewers, our actors, what are like 3 tips, they should be thinking of to nail, slay, be prepared, whatnot, for those Zoom callbacks. And then I have a little question I'll do at the end.
Okay, yes, age of Zoom. My goodness, don't we just love that? But whether it's self-tapes or Zoom, there's so much stuff that sort of combines, and folks, Mighty Tripod does an amazing job with their classes on self-tapes and auditions, Zoom auditions. Do please check them out. And David has some awesome clips on YouTube, also gives you some amazing tidbits. Check them out. So I'm not going to go into lighting and sound and all that, because they've covered that more than adequately. What I will say, just a couple of tips for Zooming. I don't know. Nikki and I did these last auditions, and I can't tell you how many people showed up with vertical. Guys, horizontal. And you can check that. It's a funny thing, but it does waste time. You guys have 5 minutes, and if you're there coming into the audition room, and it wastes your time, not just ours. But anyway, technically, let's see, make sure everything is turned off on your computer. All your tabs are closed. Your family's not using any streaming. Make sure you have the most possible bandwidth that you possibly can, because there's nothing worse than having an audition and suddenly you freeze, or the reader freezes, and you, yeah, so please make sure, that's a huge one. Turn off Siri, turn off your notifications. It's super distracting, and you're going to fall out of character like that. Um, when you come into the room and we ask you to slate, and the script calls for you coming into frame, and that's a choice you've made, feel free to do that. You're not restricted to your little area here. Use your area, use your space, know where your frame is. Create a space that invites me in so that I can feel I'm in there with you. And by that I mean, create that 3D effect. So for example, if the script calls for talking to my scene partner about my kid in the playground, I'll gesture my kid over there, that is creating a 3D effect. And for the casting director, it's super important to have that 3D experience. That's not just 2D, especially since it's on camera. And like I say, use your space. Don't be worried about leaning in or to make a point. A cool thing is to have a webcam separate from your laptop camera, because you can move that, and that does help. Know your lines. Have your script in your hand, all these 101 things. Even with Zoom calls, it's super important. And if you can't be out of your head with your lines, don't try and fish for them during the audition. I think very often I can see that on camera. When you're not in character, you're trying to think of your next line. Those first round auditions especially, it's more important for you to nail your character, to find that connection with your character, than worry about your lines. Callbacks, yeah, be off book. I don't know. Oh, I've got a big one here, and this is speaking for myself again. If you do come in and you are experiencing technical problems, which can happen, there could be a huge storm, whatever, then, I would encourage you to, once you've gotten everything fixed afterwards, tape yourself doing that audition and ask the CD or the agent, can you send it in? Because we all know in times of Zoom with technical difficulties, we want to see the best of you. And if you've got technical difficulties out of your control, go ahead, retape it and ask if you can send it and if we'll see it. I encourage you to do that.
I love that. I think one of the things we had come up in one of our classes that I at least wanted your input, or at least how you personally like to do it. We had an actor who had their reader. This was for a network TV show, one of our students out of LA. And when they got, let into their Zoom, they had their reader and they turned the reader's camera off. So the actor, which part of me went, okay, I guess that's how it would be when we used to go in the studio. You're only filming me. But at least when I was in the studio, I could see my reader. But I found it interesting that no, they turned the reader off. So they just had to make that quick adjustment. For you personally, do you allow your reader to be seen by the actor, or do you prefer them to be off camera?
Here's the tip. You ask permission to pin your reader. I think your reader should be there. Otherwise, it's not an authentic audition. Again, you can't be asked to react to a blank screen. I don't think that's fair at all. And I encourage you to pin your reader, really, because then there in the screen, you don't see yourself. And the other thing I encourage, don't have your lines up on a split screen, please, because one LA actor just did that recently. It was kind of interesting. Anyway.
I just have a quick follow-up, just because this is so important to me. Auditioning and teaching people how to audition and self-taping and lighting is my absolute passion. So just a couple more seconds to talk about it. I mean, I think if people watching this right now, wouldn't you agree that the lighting that is illuminating the three of us is perfectly fine for an audition? I mean, obviously, Angela and I have background problems. I mean, the backdrops of our space, but look, hey, here's David entering a frame. Right? So if I want to use my frame, if I need to get a little bit closer to the camera, look, there's a stool. You don't know that it's there, but suddenly I have the ability to come into a frame and have a conversation with somebody. In my opinion, sitting feels differently than standing. In my opinion, actors need to take control of their auditions and take a stand for what they're doing, what they believe in, who they think the character is, what the scene is about. Come in to the audition and own the space that you're in. Hey, I can't wait to audition for you. I've got something to show you. It's going to rock your socks off. And it's the lack of preparation for me that is mind boggling when it comes to auditions, that actors kind of will show up. And obviously this isn't true for all actors, but some actors just kind of come and kind of wing it and only be slightly familiar with the words and have an approximation of the character rather than becoming the authority on the character, having a very clear idea of what the scene is about and what you want to do and what you want to accomplish. But I think now that we've been doing this thing, and Seattle has been so behind for so long, and I talk about this in my classes all the time. My first self-taped audition was for Nikkei, but that was 10 years ago. We've been self-taping for 10 years, and it should not be a mystery of how to create a compelling audition that's taped. And it's an amazing luxury to not have to drive across town to go into a room and pay for parking and stress and sweat and get nauseous in the waiting room. Self-tapes open up so many opportunities for actors. And aside from, and thank you for talking about Mighty Tripods classes and my YouTube channel, I am not the only person who's creating videos for actors on how to light. I mean, I can't tell you to take advice about the acting tips that are out there, but there's a lot of amazing tips on how to sound better and look better and set up your camera and look professional. All this information is at the fingertips of actors. And I think it's so important that actors continue to empower themselves. So when they do have these unique opportunities to get in a room with a casting director, that they absolutely do their best. It's really, really awesome. I think that the work that you do with Nikkei is incredible. I always like being in the room with you too, and it's a gift for the actors. I have a question this is a question from one of our students, and this is when they asked this question, it made me think of the rumors or the information that I hear buzzing about Actors Access, especially. So, because we know casting directors possibly get 2,500 submissions for a co-star, right? Out of those 2,500, if the submission comes through with a demo reel or with some kind of video link, do those submissions get bumped to the top?
They don't. And here's the lowdown. That is not the first thing we go and look at. For those big network and LA castings, the one thing that's actually really important, and we haven't even talked about that yet, is your IMDb page. IMDb, your profile on IMDb is so important because we do go there. We do look at your star meter. Hate to say it. But it's important, it's important you keep that up to date as well. It's important that whenever you do a job and the producers are not putting your, not crediting you, you got to go after them. IMDb is super important, especially in LA. Having a reel, I'm going to go back to one role that we were casting. We had 2,500 submissions for it. And it was comedic. And something else specific. I don't want to talk about who this actually was, so I'm going to keep it a bit vague. But anyway, so I got it down to the top 50, and then I started looking, and this is where I was looking at reels. When it comes to a comedic, when it's something really specific like this, when it's really a comedic or heavy drama or whatever, it's helpful to have those two reels. It's not a must, but it is helpful. And at that level, you should have a reel. It's important. Indie film world, when you're starting out and you're getting your feet wet, and it's difficult to get good content for your reel, I know that could be a little harder. Maybe a little sizzle reel, a 60-second sizzle reel is gold. But But again, you know, your clips, your video clips that you can put on in casting networks, for example, that's great. But, you know, if you look at Actors Access and you look at their profiles and how different it is for us here, it's quite a difference. You've got, you know, Actors Access, those guys have, they're on it. They've got their, you know, their commercial shot. They've got their a few character shots. They've got all their comedic, dramatic, and then even excerpts from TV shows they've been on, and so you could actually see them, you know. And yeah, it's and everything's up to date all the time. I'm still sometimes surprised, and I guess, you know, if people are not into it, if they're just, you know, hobby actors, that's great, doing it for fun, you know. And I realize that it's an investment, but yes, I would say in this market, a reel is not as important, but I think the bigger markets, it's a must. And IMDb,
We're at time already, which is like, oh, I think we could go on and on and on, but we're going to go ahead and jump to a little thing we call our bonus round. This is where, Sandra, just drop all the hats. This is just speaking from us to you as Sandra. We're going to ask you some silly questions. It can literally be one-word answers. So our number one bonus round question is, waffles or pancakes?
pancakes.
Love it. Number two. Number two.
But they have to be vegan.
Noted, David, noted. Number two. And this one has a double meaning, so it's however you hear it. What is your favorite jam?
Raspberry.
Number three. Just cast this project. You've received the top honors. I would love to dedicate this award to.
Okay. So I love God. So he's number one, really. But I feel like, you know, with all the work and everything that goes into it, and you guys know this, my family is super, super patient with me. And to Nike for being my mentor, really. We're here for you, really. And that's what it's all about, is to share our stories visually and make it happen. And it's so important. Keep going, keep creating. And for those of you who are thinking about getting started, get started.
I love that. And you almost kind of answered the final one, but I'm still going to ask. So on that note, Sandra, if you were to say this, how would you finish this sentence? Next time I go into the trenches, I will be sure to
Not give any feedback.
And that's it, y'all. That's it. Sandra Scragg, from her mouth to your ears.
Thank you so much for spending time with us, Sandra. I think that casting directors are notoriously undervalued. So if you are out there and you're considering making your movie, you should hire a casting director, because they will make your jobs easier. Sandra Scragg, amazing time. Thank you for coming on to Into the Trenches. We appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much for giving me the platform and for giving me your time. I appreciate it very much.